So when it says simplify here, you want to have your fraction in lowest terms. That means any time that you have a factor on the top and a factor on the bottom that are the same, you'll be able to simplify them, because 5 divided by 5 is 1, a divided by a is 1, x plus 3 in brackets divided by x plus 3 in brackets would be 1. So anytime you have the same factor in the numerator and the denominator, you can simplify that. So for a, it's all multiplying. We have 2a over 9 times 3b squared over 5a squared. Now most of you will be able to do this quickly in your head, but if I wanted to break things up, so if you're looking at the numbers, can you see on the top you're going to have 2 times 3? And on the bottom 9 times 5? But maybe you say to yourself, I know that I can simplify 3 and 9 to 1/3 first. If you can simplify that first, when I multiply my numbers, on the top I'll just get 2 times 1 now will be 2, and on the bottom I'll have 3 times 5, which will be 15. But if you did 6 over 45, you would then have to reduce it later to 2 over 15. Anytime that you can simplify it early, you'll find it'll make your life easier. Now, can you see on these fractions that we have 1a on the top and 2 a's on the bottom? Because you have a squared on the bottom, which means a times a. If you cancel them out, what would you be left with? 1a. And where would it be, on the top or the bottom? On the bottom. If we look at our b's, we have b squared on the top. Do we have any b's on the bottom? No, so they wouldn't cancel out. And that would be your simplified expression. I mean, if you wanted to, you could break up 9 to be 3 times 3. You could break up b to be b times b, and a to be a times a. And once you have anything that's the same, can cancel out and see what you're left with. When we do that, you also get 2b squared over 15a. But most people don't need to write everything out because you can visualize what's happening, especially if it was like b to the 20. It gets a little painful to write out 20 b's in a row. Now in part B here, if we look at our numbers, on the top we have 2 times 5. On the bottom we have 3 times 8. On the top and the bottom, is there anything we could simplify? The 2 and the 8 would simplify to 1/4, right? Here we have x squared, and here we have an x. Can you imagine if you wrote this x squared instead as x times x, that one of those x's is going to cancel out with that x on the bottom? Yes? And we also have x plus 2 as a common factor. Oh, can you see that I still have another x here that could cancel out with this x? So that one and this one can cancel out as well. Now one thing that you might find with these questions is once you start canceling everything out, when you go to write your final answer, you kind of have to take a step back and say, oh, what's left? Especially if you get overzealous in canceling something out, like you make your line way too big and it goes through the 3 and it shouldn't have. So what am I left with? What am I left with on the top? I'm left with a 5 and an x minus 4. What am I left with on the bottom? A 3 and a 4. 3 times 4 will be 12, and that's it. So sometimes people like to write like that x squared out So one thing that I find that is sometimes helpful in questions like these is if you do write the x squared as x times x, and if you, first of all, just take time to cancel out what's identical. I'm just going to cancel out the x plus 2 and the x plus 2, the x and the x, the x and the x. I'm not going to worry about my numbers right away, because as soon as I cancel out the 2 and the 8 and write 1 and 4, sometimes you'll miss that. So now if I take the next step and say, well, what's left? I have 2 times 5 x minus 4, 3 times 8 on the bottom. Then you can look at your numbers in front and see if there's something that could simplify. And maybe you want to actually multiply them and say 10x minus 4 over 24, and then look, oh, 10 over 24, that can simplify to 5 over 12. So if you like that better, not simplifying your numbers right away, that's fine as well. Sometimes if you try to do too much at once, you get yourself lost in some of the details. So we can do so far question 3, 5a, 6a, and b, and 11